Being a competitive game, every character in Smash Ultimate's roster is disliked by someone. When you're on the receiving end of something, it's a lot easier to view them in a negative light as their success results in your failure. But when looking at things objectively, hardly anyone would consider a character to be so beyond redemption, they should never have been included in the game. Even Steve, for example, would be perfectly fine in the eyes of many if he wasn't so overtuned, if his minecart, anvil, diamond moves and whatnot didn't have the same kill power as a Shulk with Smash Shard without the possible repercussions that come with such a power. Same goes for Kazuya. If instead of a singular combo string it took multiple full rotations to actually kill you, or if he didn't have a dozen confirms off electric at any percent, then people wouldn't mind him all that much. There is one character though who, no matter who you ask or who they play, no one has a positive opinion of. Even mains of characters with a favorable matchup against her likely still have a burning hatred for her as well. That character is Min Min, a member of the Notorious Fighters Pass 2. While I briefly mentioned her in my badly designed characters video, I wanted to do a more in-depth piece on her since I feel like her very existence in Smash is an offense to the game and that there's no possible way you can balance her to make her feel rewarding to play and healthy to play against at the same time. In this video, we'll be going over the many problems with Min Min. Min Min doesn't experience the same widespread backlash as Kazuya, Steve, and Sonic in light of her not being quite as omnipresent in the metagame, especially in the West, thank God. ARMS is a fairly low-key franchise in respect to other big names among the Smash roster, so Min Min's inclusion to the game was definitely one of the less recognized ones, particularly within Fighters Pass 2, given we had Sora, Sephiroth, Steve, and the like. With her unique and inherently polarizing moveset further compounding how weird of a character she was, there wasn't a whole lot of exploration with her during the Wi-Fi era, which is unexpected. Given how much more effective zoners and long-range fighters are in an environment where reaction time is compromised, you'd think Min Min would get a lot of attention, but I think it was her aforementioned polarizing playstyle that made her difficult to pick up. Zoners like Samus are popular because she still retains a lot of the normal conventions of a Smash fighter, but Min Min was nothing like other zoners, not even close. Consequently, it took surprisingly longer than usual for Min Min to find more widespread results, and during that time most people ascertained their value from a conceptual level. Naturally, with her excessive attack range and stage control, people immediately assumed her to be a high tier at worst, hanging closer to top tier. After all, with that much coverage, along with having some very strong grounded options, it wouldn't be unreasonable to think she's the most powerful walling character in the game. I would say she mostly took off when Dabuz and Proto Bonham took her up as co-mains, notably around the time when Proto beat Leo at Double Down with her, or at least that was around the time when the West began to notice Min Min. In Japan, where theory crafting and methodical play take precedence over instincts, Min Min was picked up by a lot of different players, from mid-level all the way to top level, and since then, with the help of players like Dora Migi scoring great marks with her in major events, Min Min's theoretical strengths finally obtained empirical data reinforcing just how good she is as a character, and why she's terribly designed for the landscape of Smash Bros. A running gag from Brawl all the way to Ultimate is the range power creep that's been taking place among fighters with disjointed hitboxes, even though Marth's attack range in Melee was quite high when you compare to Ike's range in Brawl ever so slightly being greater in coverage, and then further pushed by Shulk in Smash 4 who had by far the most attack range in the game, which was then matched by Cloud and Corrin having more or less the same as well. There was a definitive leap in coverage among sword fighters. Things are pushed even further with the release of the Belmonts, who by that point decidedly eclipsed everyone in terms of non-projectile reach with moves like forward smash, forward and back air, and up smash and up air striking extraordinarily far. What's interesting is that the Belmonts were a precursor to the balancing dilemma affecting Byleth, Sephiroth, and to a lesser extent Min Min later on. Speaking of which, Byleth would be yet another distance demon that kept up against the range of the Belmonts, but then that range would get beaten up by Sephiroth, whose moves were far superior in reach to any of the previous characters I talked about. I understand Min Min came out before Sephiroth, but bear with me. And finally we reach Min Min, completely shattering our preconceptions of what is considered min-range. I mean, for crying out loud, her attacks can span almost the entire length of Smashville. Regarding that balance dilemma, notice how from the Belmonts onwards, they stopped giving sorties arcing swings for attacks. Simon and Richter's forward and back airs travel straight, Violet's fair and Nair do the same, along with Sephiroth. While Sephiroth does have an overhead arcing swing for an up air, evidently they had to give it a mountain of restrictions to keep it in check, namely being one of the slowest up airs and having the highest landing lag out of any up air in the game, subsequently making it very unsafe on shield. It's fairly obvious why they didn't let these characters swing their fairs and bears like Roy or Pyra, because with that much range they would be the best moves in the game. Moreover, frame data. Violet and Sephiroth in particular are notoriously slow in terms of frame data overall to further keep their immense range from overpowering the competition. So despite the devs going way over the top in how far a character can exert pressure, they at least made efforts to even things out when it came to the usual trade-off of speed versus power and/or distance for those except for Min Min. Ostensibly, she was kept in check by the same rules, having one of the farthest attack ranges in the game and indubitably the farthest non-projectile range. The frame data on those moves are not all that impressive on paper. For example, her forward tilts have a frame 14 startup. Her forward smashes begin their first active hitbox on frame 16, which is surprisingly fast for a forward smash, but when you notice how many total frames there are, including the time it takes for her arms to retract after extending, they're pretty laggy. The majority of Min Min's attacks comprise forward and back facing moves. Her normals will always be her Dragon Head, while her specials can be a second Dragon Head, or Ram Ram, or Mega One. So functionally, Min Min's A and B buttons are the same when used horizontally, and the same goes for whether you're using them in the air or on the ground. As a result, I'm fairly certain Min Min has the lowest number of individual moves of any character, which might explain why playing her is an acquired taste. There's not much nuance to her gameplay really, but that's because she doesn't need nuance when said moves do literally everything. Min Min's core strength is obviously her ability to exert pressure on her opponent from a distance far enough to where the threat of response is negligible. Her arms travel far enough to exceed most close quarters fighters' threat ranges threefold if not more, while even against sword fighters, she can still keep a safe enough distance from them. Expectedly, her toolkit's exclusively designed around equal parts, long-range pressure, and playing keep away, as is the case for most zoners. The usual dynamic between a zoner and a brawler, or any non-zoner for that matter, is that if the zoner does a good enough job keeping their opponent away from them, they win the game. But if the opponent gets close to them, the likelihood of winning a close quarters battle is next to zero. I'm aware that zoners in Smash have deceptively strong get-off-me tools like the added shield options on Samus, the Lynx, and Pac-Man, but conceptually speaking, zoner wins if enemy far, zoner loses if enemy close. What makes Min Min a problem is how far she pushes that enemy far to a point where it almost negates the possibility of enemy close actually happening. While it's true that she breaks apart if her opponent gets within range of her, like I said before, Min Min's range is so long that she can even keep out Sephiroth, whose own range is big enough to perpetually keep opponents out of reach in its own right. Were it just range, that wouldn't be too big a cause for concern, but Min Min is not lacking in power and coverage whatsoever. Most long-range attacks that are strong require a fair bit of time to power up like the many charge shots we have in this game. Min Min's attacks, however, can be immediately threatening even from a far distance, namely when she forward smashes. These aren't tiny projectiles that do a bit of chip damage. Her attacks can and will kill you even from across the stage. Fighting in linear directions, whether horizontally or vertically, is where she's at her best. If you're trying to approach her from the side, she can just cover that space, preventing you from doing so, thanks to her arms technically being classified as melee attacks, along with the fact that her two arms have separate action cues. Trying to contest her from that same distance is next to impossible. Ordinarily, it's unwise to attack a projectile with a grounded option, as that will most likely result in a clank, allowing the player who threw out the projectile to take advantage of the recoil to attack you. Min Min follows the same principle where trying to dash attack or forward tilt her first arm results in a clank, but she can still throw her second arm to punch right through you, making your only real safe option to attack her from the air. But approaching her vertically can also be tricky for two reasons. Her anti-air tools are surprisingly good. Up tilt comes out frame 5 and has a good reach, while up smash comes out at frame 8, not only making it a respectable added shield option, but having immense verticality, good damage, and decent kill power even after the nerfs, so full vertical approach may not be the best option either, leaving you with only one choice, diagonal approach. When asking a Min Min player how to beat them, assuming they're not lying, they'll typically respond with the diagonal approach, which I suppose isn't wrong per se, but even that can be tricky to deal with. Ram Ram forfeits attack strength in favor of speed and coverage, having an arcing loop as it returns to Min Min, giving her decent aerial coverage albeit from afar. However, she can also respond to opponents who try to jump towards her from a 45 to 60 degree angle by jumping with them, extending her hitboxes even more. So if she burns one arm attacking on the ground, she can use the other arm while jumping to respond to your jump, creating a sort of low-level, high-level neutral game. Her key weakness is that she can't attack again until her arms come back to her, meaning if she tosses out both arms, you have a small window to strike back. What makes this easier said than done is that she can cover so many options with just one arm, let alone two. A good way to approach an opponent would be to run towards them, then roll in to dodge whatever attack or projectile they throw at you trying to stop you, and then punish accordingly. But you can't do that against Min Min because even if you dodge her first attack, her second arm will just hit you during end lag. Same applies to if you try to approach in the air. If you attempt to air dodge her first arm, she can attack you with her second. Most characters can only perform one attack at a time, so if you pick the correct evasive option to avoid said attack, you're in the clear for a punish. But against Min Min, she can do 2 attacks at a time, and if you exhaust your options dealing with the first attack, you get punished by the second. Recall how people hate fighting ice climbers because the second attack covers the first. Min Min's arms do the same thing. This also applies to her advantage state. If Min Min scores an attack against you and puts you into a tech chase on stage, no matter what tech option you choose, she can cover all of them. If you neutral tech, you'll either get hit by the lingering hitbox of the first arm or the second. If you roll away, she can chase you with Dragon Laser. If you try to roll in and dodge the first arm, the second arm will cover that. By extension, Min Min can apply the same pressure against you at the ledge. If you neutral get up, you'll get hit by the lingering hitboxes on either arm 1 or 2. If you jump, she can snipe you with Ram Ram or the second arm if she misses. If you roll in, same thing. Are you starting to understand why I said Min Min's skin lacks nuance because she doesn't really need it? Her 1-2 combination practically covers all aspects of neutral and advantage state. Oftentimes in Smash, you hear the concept of rock, paper, scissors, an interaction where you have to guess the option to respond to your opponent's option in the hopes your option beats out theirs. Min Min gets to essentially throw out two hands, no pun intended. Done correctly, she will always result in either a draw or a win. The only way she can lose an RPS is if she overcommits to a decision or you bait one out, but if she's playing reactive to what you're doing, you're guaranteed to lose. I haven't even mentioned her edge guarding capability, but case in point, Ram, the single easiest two-framing tool in the game, and it's not even funny. But therein lies my main point. Min Min technically shares the same central weakness of being a punching bag if you close the gap on her, but the way her kit was constructed, she can engineer scenarios that give her a 3-to-1 advantage against her opponent. Combining her absurd attack range and ability to shoot two attacks out one after another makes all conventional ways of approaching and engaging with her risky, if not flat out ineffective. Furthermore, because her range is so far, what would otherwise be committal on one character isn't on her because she's so far away from you. Her foretail and force smashes are all minus 30 on shield or something, but when she's halfway across the screen, they might as well be positive on shield, enabling her to spam moves against you with impunity. Worse yet, you can't even fight fire with fire. Another way to deal with the zoner is by either being the zoner yourself and just snowball fighting with them, or with anti-projectile tools, reflectors, and absorbers. But neither tool is effective against Min Min. Her arms are not projectiles, so you can't reflect them. At the same time, they're disjointed, so you can't counter them. Projectiles are also hard to use against her since, like I said, she can clank with one arm while striking through with the other. Or alternatively, Min Min can just use her own reflector. So basically, she counters the very tools that are supposed to counter her class. Fighting Min Min is very similar to fighting Steve. She forces you to play the game her way and then proceeds to stack the deck in her favor to create lose-lose situations. And even if you somehow navigate your way through that 1 out of 4 scenarios you don't lose, the chance of you being able to actually reverse on her might be 0 because she's halfway across the stage. She doesn't have to go off stage to edgeguard you and possibly risk a reversal because her arms can do it for her. She doesn't have to expose herself trying to ledge trap you because she can cover all 4 options from center stage. She doesn't have to risk anything in neutral because even if you block or dodge both her attacks, again, she's all the way across the fucking stage. At the very least, for the likes of Steve, Kazuya, and Sonic, by attacking you, they do give you a chance to attack them back, however minuscule it may appear. But Min Min literally breaks the fundamental rules of interactions in Smash by pressuring you from so far away that you're not in a position to respond even if you could. Unlike other broken characters who lower your agency, Min Min completely negates it. The thing is, with how polarizing she is as a character, there's no way to nerf her in a way that gives her opponent a proper fighting chance without also crippling her. If you make it so her arms have a hitbox, she becomes useless for the simple fact that you can out-shield all her attacks without even trying or just swing in front of you and then hit her. If you make it so clanking the first arm prevents her from using the second, she becomes useless. And you can't increase the time it takes for her arms to come back to her because she becomes too slow, at which point she will feel horrible to play and no one will play her. Not saying anyone would complain, mind you, but in the spirit of fairness. Essentially, Min Min's egregiously polarizing gameplay makes her the closest thing we have to a stat checker in Smash. She can either be overpowered or garbage, nothing in between. That's why I believe she's a worst designed character in Smash, and if there's any character who deserves to be removed from the game, it would be her, more than Steve or Kazuya. If she was actually fun to play, I think she would kill the game faster than any of the lane characters ever would. What do you guys think about Min Min? Do you agree with my thoughts or do you think I'm exaggerating? Feel free to share in the comments. For now though, if you enjoyed the video, it would be great if you left a like and subscribed. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and why not check out my video on the problem with Sonic if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.
All over that man for the past 30 seconds.
Alright, I gotta say, what is he doing?
What was looking like a really convincing lead for Kameme is just dissipated, and now Doramigi with the stock lead, looking to take advantage of it by racking up this percent with the Ram.
Oh, yeah, okay, you got the drag down. Nice. Alright, one stock to one stock, Kameme. You can definitely bring this back. Just get with one early Sheik combo, good put a percent, or maybe an edge guard, realistically. Then he's back in the game. It's over. We'll see, we'll see. Oh, yeah, okay, fine landing there. This might be big. Yeah, all right. Well, okay, being able to air dodge early out there to end that event state, but... Oh, no. Doramigi reverses it. Oh, my dude, God. What is he doing? Okay, no, I can't.